I don't know if anybody's really going to be here only because I didn't really do the greatest job of promoting this, but you guys are around and sorry. Hey, what's up, Brandon? Hold on.
How's it going? Sorry.
What's up, Brandon? I know you were just finishing your other stream, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know who's going to come, but whatever. We're just going to do this anyway. First thing I want to do, I want to go over. This is kind of fun because I want to go over my build for Xfinity because we can't do anything about it anymore.
Yeah.
So now, first of all, correct me if I'm wrong. That starts at like 8 tonight, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Or however, I know 8's like the approximate start time. Whenever the Cup Series ends up being over,
Then they clear the track and get everything ready to go. So that's like the ultimate like Sunday late night hammer, right? So everybody lost all their money and everything else, after all the golf is done and all the Cup Series done, all the NBA is done. Because NBA is like 6 o'clock, so everything will be done probably by the time. No, not completely done by the time this thing fires up. So let me tell you what I did, okay? And it's kind of what I want to
real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you. Did you do well with UFC yesterday? Because you talked about fading that main event.
I did. I want a seat to like a $10,000 qualifier or something like that, and awesome. I did all right. Yeah, I did. I faded not the whole thing, but pretty damn well close. And so I did okay. Again, I didn't mean for it to happen that way, but
you'll take it, man.
No pictures on the scorecard, as they say in golf. Like it's. Yeah. But yeah, so what I did was this. So, and again, I didn't really get a chance to talk much about the slate with you or anybody. It seems as though there was so much place differential as far as like what was showing up at the projections. But what I ended up doing is taking. So I did 40 lineups, and what I did was I did 10 lineups with just kind of like straight, right? Then I did 10 lineups where I just picked one guy in the top 10, and then 10 with a different guy in the top 10, and then third with a third one. Okay, and I just happened to pick them. And what I ended up doing here, I'll share my screen here, and the ownerships of these things really were interesting. So I also want to share the ownership projections I had versus what actually came out. It seems as though the ownership projections on like the place differential things they were even more owned than I would have expected, and nobody played any of the top 10, 12 guys. So what I did, so the three guys that I just happened to have picked, okay, was number one. And again, in the back of my head, I remember in a video this week, you mentioned the name Austin Hill somewhere. So I'm like, okay, he's got the pole. That's going to be one guy, okay? Second one I picked was Custer. That was like the more logical one. And the third one, the other guy you mentioned was Nemechek, right? So so what I did was I did 10 lineups with Nemechek, 10 lineups with Austin Hill, 10 lineups with with Custer, and then I just basically built the same. And the ownership was like really telling here. So Custer came out like 27% owned, which is what I kind of figured. But you got Austin Hill was 9%. So you know what? That's fine by me. I don't know. Like, you get the pole, maybe whatever it is. Maybe his car's good enough and he can hang on there for a little while until everybody kind of goes past him. Like, I don't know. And then you have Nemechek, who's was only 14%. So that's what I ended up doing is that. Now, again, as far as construction on a track like this, right? Is this the type of track where you can generate some points? Like just from being close for a little while, like all I want to be is the guy that gets the lead and like hold it for a while. Is that something on a track like this for openers that we can do? Because that's what I was thinking of doing for the Cup.
Yeah, and specifically the fact that we don't have practice really leaves it wide open. Like we don't know what Austin Hill, Nemechek, even Cole Custer up front, like we don't have an indication of where they are in terms of speed. I'm right with you. Like I have 8% Austin Hill, 8% Nemechek,
nice.
17% Cole Custer. I did the same things just in case those guys end up staying up front and being able to run there. But I think like it's wide open for any early lap leader for Xfinity in this race, specifically with there being, so many or so much focus on the place differential in the back, I think getting different with your lap leader is completely the way to go. I love the way that you went ahead and did it, specifically with, like Nemechek, for example, having 10 lineups with him. Like, I think that's awesome. Just going above the field. Like, if Nemechek shows up and kills, like, you're going to be just fine.
Right.
Same
Just
thing
get
with
the
like
lead and
Austin Hill,
just
because
go.
he
Just
didn't
get the
bring the
lead and
ownership
just
that he
go.
should have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna see that happens, and the rest of it was pretty chalky. I played Timmy Hill, I played, and I thought he'd be higher owned. 4,700 is really cheap, it seems. So I played him and Chastain, and listen, all the guys, and I was able to fit all those guys in pretty handily. And then, let's see what kind of combination shows up. That's all. I mean, then
Yeah, I want to talk ownership real fast. I really have come to the conclusion that through people in Discord and with other things that I think Roto Grinders really is just pushing the ownership
I'm like
for.
sharing what quote my ownership projections. So these were the ownership projections, basically the industry, like in general, pretty much. And this is what I had like kind of going into it. And at the top, like even like some of these, like Reddick was even higher owned. Like all the place differential guys ended up really higher owned. But some of these, what was Curry? How did he end up? Hang on.
Let me look.
I don't know how he ended up owned here. Bailey Kerr was high owned too. But like I guess some of these others, like Blaine Perkins, he was like 13. What were you gonna? Well, I'm sorry. What were you gonna say about ownership?
I was gonna mention that I honestly like the way that you got to 29% projected ownership for Joey Gase, and the fact that he came in, I think, right at like 25 or something. I don't really get that, and
Okay.
I was bringing up the point that I believe Roto Grinders really is pushing that, really is dictating ownership, because I think Stevie had Joey Gase at like one of his higher projected drivers. And I was just shocked to see that ownership come through on Joey Gase. I thought Timmy Hill would have been way more than 25%, to be honest with you.
Well, what happens is, okay, so this is the way I deal with my ownerships, right? So the first thing I do is obviously I take wherever ownership projections I can get them. And I did some back testing to see who's like closest. But then what I do is I run like basically like 1,000 lineups, right? Based on the median projections, you know what I mean? And just see who shows up, and that's usually a decent thing. So I was surprised as well that Gase. First, when I saw him at 29%, I'm like, really? And then I'm like, oh, he's going to be like 15, right? But then he ended up 25 anyway. But you know what? Stevie does, they dominate the industry to some degree, so people do follow him. So, we could talk about that another time, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll just kind of see. So this is a mile and a half track.
2 miles.
So okay. So this is 2 miles. So that's why they're not playing the dominators as much, because there's not as many points. Okay. That makes some sense. So so this is what I was thinking about. My initial builds for the Cup was actually very similar, right? And again, I was going to talk through it with you because it's the same thing. Like you've looked at let's pull up my projections here, which is again just a combination of whatever, and I'll show you where, who the highest projected plays are. And I should actually put the starting positions here to give everybody a sense of what we're looking at here. But it's Byron and Reddick. And when you run optimals, like these guys almost end up like at 100% of the line. Okay. Byron and Reddick, they're the combination of being cheap and, you know what I mean? Like, and at the back and all that stuff. And you don't get to anybody near the front, like kind of for a while, as far as ownership goes, until you get to Logano maybe. So what I ended up doing is this. I just took a couple of guys. So I see these guys project pretty well, like Bell, Logano, and Blaney. He was like kind of up there a little bit. So, and there was a fourth one that I had, Bowman. Okay. So Bowman, I like that he was only 15% at least. Listen, these are the projections. So what the hell do I know? Right? So what I did was the same thing. I built 10 lineups, and I basically literally manually I do this. I go into my thing. I just basically, okay, let's start with Christopher Bell. I'll lock in Christopher Bell. Okay. We'll lock him in. We'll set this to kind of like a half ownership fade, which is pretty good. I don't know why SaberSim is a correlation metrics for here. Actually, there is some degree of correlation, I suppose. Anyway, so then I'll build like say 10 liners with Christopher Bell at the front. And what's cool is that it's not like your normal. See, sometimes like SaberSim and like general optimizers, they'll kind of get weird and they'll give you like 4 dominators sometimes, like some of these races. And that's actually an anti-correlative strategy because like you can't, you know what I mean? Like you can't have 5 guys lead laps at the same time, right? So then I'll end up, and these are the way the builds end up. I'll end up with Bell and then all of these dudes.
All the place differential, yeah.
Then all these dudes. And then I went back and I did the same. Then you go back to home and then you do the same thing. And I picked Logano. I imagine Logano of the guys that I did is going to be the chalkiest of them all, you know, between say Bell, Logano, Bowman, and then Blaney. I did him too. And that's just kind of the way I ran with it. I didn't feel as though I wanted to be extra funky and play like 2, you know, but I figured I would just try it. And like I said, you know, if you get one of these guys that gets like you said, there was no practice. So you get these guys who knows what these cars are like, you know, maybe Christopher Bell just hugs the rail and just freaking just has it, you know what I mean? And Logano, I mean, it's one thing for these guys to make up the price differential, you know, but getting the win does matter to somewhat, right? I mean, like, so I don't know that the other guy that I was thinking about of this top group to throw in, I just couldn't quite do it. Just the projection just wasn't quite good enough. Was like Suarez, only because I've had luck with Suarez in the past. You know, I just get a little, you know, kind of whatever. It's going to be a little tough because he's got to. Not only does he have to. This is the way I think about things. Not only does he have to at some point get past all of these guys, you know, Bell, Logano, Bowman, but he also has to sort of hold off kind of all the other
guys coming from the back that are going to eventually race for the lead.
Yeah, I think so. And that's where I ended up building. Now, where my troubles are this, right? So if you go to where I am right now, after doing that, I have 100% Byron and Reddick. Anyway,
that's hilarious.
You know what I mean? And 92% Eric Jones. You know, so what ends up happening, even when you do it this way, is you get, you know what I mean? Like is you get those guys locked, and then all the shuffle comes from all the other combinations. You know what I mean?
So we're in the exact same boat. So real quickly, you know, I think I'm doing 16 lines myself, and I have, you know, specific lines for Bell, even Stenhouse, just because I don't think anybody's going to own him. Logano, Bowman, for the same strategy that you're employing with the top 10 guys. I'm trying to employ more with Denny Hamlin, Truex, and Kyle Busch.
Nice.
But I'm running the exact same thing to where I'm nearly 100% on Eric Jones and Chase Briscoe, and absolutely like going out of my way. And Byron, and I mean the same, you know, Byron, Briscoe, Reddick. I'm having to just tell myself I need to at least be at 80% in case one of these guys dies. It doesn't kill.
Right, that's what I think about, you know. Like,
yeah, and I'm okay with being high owned on people. Like that's because when it works out, you're going to do well, and we're going to be over the field. Like people aren't going to be 90, 100%, 75% on people. Like that just doesn't happen, or at least hopefully this might be the one time. Then we're all just SOL. But yeah, I'm totally with you in running the situation.
Yeah. So and the other thing I think about, again, I think, listen, it's not the same as Daytona, but I think about when you speak about playing these place differential plays that people are going to be on these guys. I wonder if there are pivots off of these guys from like a similar position. Like, I don't know how much people see Chase Elliott doesn't qualify for me because he's like kind of like more of like a guy people probably play anyway.
Oh, wait, but before you get into this topic, because I know we're going to try and talk about pivots here. One of the, like, Chase Elliott, I think is a good pivot today because of his price. I don't think people are going to, like, I know he's like the 4th highest owned, but when you look at his pricing compared to the other place differential plays,
right,
he's the most expensive. I think we might, be getting less ownership on him just due to the fact that everybody's going to want to jam in, you know, Jones, Reddick, Briscoe, even people like Austin Dillon, you know, whatever the case may be. I actually like paying up for place differential for in this race due to the fact that I think it's going to be slightly less owned.
Well, let me throw like another. Again, this is all conceptual, which is what I kind of like because I want to try to throw things out that can apply to further slates. So again, like the context of this slate, as far as I'm concerned, again, is place differential. And then, like you said, there are people that are going to play some dominant. You know what I mean? There are people like you and people that are like me that are somewhat sharp that'll play some of this. And we even talk about these kind of like pivots like Elliott off of like these guys that are in the back. What about like pivot off of both those ranges? Like, how about paying up for like Hamlin, who's not even either? Like, he's not really near the front. He's not even really near the back. And he's fighting for that same salary as all these others. And again, I'm just guessing. I mean, I have 17%, whatever. I mean, you can't play all these guys at 10-5, right? And I don't know. Think about this for a second.
I love Hamlin as a direct pivot off of Larson, starting position wise, salary wise, and same thing with like Kyle Busch. That's why. I mean, I know we're goofing around with guys like in a top 6% ownership, but Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin are two guys that I love today on what I think their ownership might end up being.
Well, you know what? It's the concept of pivots. This is a conversation that we have about basketball and baseball and all this stuff. So there's several ways to think about leverage and pivots. Is like you said, there's a price pivot, right? And there's kind of like a positional pivot, right? Like one way to get leverage off of, say, you know, like I said, Elliott or whatever, I don't know, let's say Larson, right? You could either play someone at the same price that's like nowhere near him, right, in a starting position, or you could play someone in his starting position that's not even near his price, or you could play someone who's right at his price in his position, you know. So that is it's really interesting because it's again, I think about correlation as well. You know, like if you have guys from the same position, they're really fighting for the same, as Pierce says, like the same bucket of eligible points, right? Like if you have like a guy, you know, take it to the extreme. If you have a guy at the pole and a guy at the 2, right? They're fighting for the exact same point, right? For finishing points and dominator points, right? And not only that, but if they're the same price, they're fighting among the same price range, right? Like Austin Hill is not fighting for the same points as William Byron is, you know, unless you can think about going for the win, whatever it is. But so that is interesting. Now I'm looking through some more of these ownerships, and I'm trying to get greedy. Now what's cool about it again is because I did it the way I did it, and I'm going to get like 100% or like pretty much like virtually 100% of these guys. And each of these builds, I'm just going to get like just some
like just one dude, yeah.
You know, and who knows? Maybe this is the day. Justin Haley, he's 23%. Good grief. Maybe this is the Alec Almirola day. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? You know, so that's what I do like about, and I don't have a problem with going 100% anybody. You know, the weird thing is, and it doesn't really matter which way. Like there's sometimes where Larson, like last year, was like from the pole at 11-4, and you just knew he was whatever. He was very highly likely to just wire the field. You know what I mean? Lead 80% of the laps and score 140 points and whatever it is and win the race. I have no problem 100% of him. I also don't. It's scary, but I don't have a problem with the 100% of like the AJ Allmendinger from the 36 hole in an Xfinity race type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, which sometimes happens, or in the road course race, so something like that. So I don't have a problem with doing that, because especially with NASCAR being so variant, that I'd like to have as many other combinations.
Yeah,
I think as possible. But again, what I'm struggling with is, like you said, I mean, like that. I've literally 100. You're like, oh God, if Byron just something happens to the engine. I mean, like,
and your day, you know,
especially what it is, you know. But
specifically two races in one day with very similar types of builds of being near 100% on certain drivers. Like, you can very easily just have a poor day back to back.
Well, Well, so I
And
have
if it
another
happens, it
question.
happens.
So I have another question. This is one of the reasons I did it this way with the picking of a dominator. This is I don't know if you've actually done any work with this, but I'm going to build like literally like 150 lineups with my projections, with no restrictions,
Mhm.
no whatever, and I know exactly what they're going to look like because I've done this before. Okay, what this is going to look like, presuming that didn't save any of my other uh, restraints, it's going to look exactly like this. Okay.
Mhm.
It's going to look that everybody, almost everybody, is from 30 back. Okay. 95% this,
Mhm.
almost, and like lineups like this, with
Mhm.
this looks like a freaking Daytona lineup, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and all this stuff. So my question, I guess, is, I mean, can this win? In other words, doesn't somebody have to lead these laps? Doesn't somebody have to, or because it's not as many laps, it's just not going to matter. That it's more fast laps and place differential, and this is supposed to be treated somewhat just like a Daytona race, and you're just supposed to play all these guys.
So I've gotten more on board throughout the evening of leaning towards like not worrying about the laps being led and stuff, only due to the fact that we're gonna have a competition caution
Oh,
and then two stage cautions in this race. So
okay,
we'll probably lose just with those alone, probably like 25 green flag laps.
okay,
We saw a lot of yellows last year with this car, and they had some practice and stuff. This is going to be a green racetrack with no rubber on there. I think we can get into a situation where we have a race that might only have 140 green flag laps, if not less. And this isn't including the rain. Like rain is in the area. This race might end like due to rain. Um, so I think there's a lot of situations to where the lead is constantly flopped every caution due to pit strategy, due to somebody trying a different line. I don't know if somebody runs away with this racetrack or runs away with this race, and that severely hinders like people like Christopher Bell and stuff. Like Bell can easily lead, 25 laps and get 20 fast laps and then end up finishing six in the race and get outscored by people starting in the back. Not even
right,
specifically talking about Byron, but somebody like Austin Dillon could easily outscore him by just showing up and finishing like 13th or something. So the fact that we're seeing lines kind of built like Daytona, I've kind of felt more comfortable leaning into that
okay,
and running more like 5-1 lineups, kind of like how you've been
yeah.
doing. You just haven't said that to where you have, one guy, whether it be starting in the top 10 or top 20, and then everybody else in the back of the field. Like that's kind of where my builds have just ended up on both sides today, FanDuel and DraftKings.
Hey, I had one other car specific question. And you know what? As this is what happens to my brain when you get older. I don't even know whether it's from the Cup race or the Xfinity race. And it's Xfinity race. We'll talk about it more conceptually, I guess. There was a situation that you mentioned in your early video this week that you were going to follow up on about something like there was one of the cars that was bought, the motor was bought or something, and you were going to
Mhm.
look into whether they were going to be in that car. What driver was that? What car was that?
So that was Timmy Hill.
Okay.
So MBM, typically at the plate races at Daytona Talladega, they'll typically lease engines from Toyota or Chevrolet through Joe Gibbs or Hendrick. Well, MBM did that, and for one of their cars, then had an in-house like super speedway car. Long story short, neither one of those cars qualified for the race. I don't know how much it is to lease these engines and stuff, but the engine value is probably $80,000. And the fact that that engine wasn't used on the track and it wasn't like lost in a wreck, I don't know if like whoever they leased it from says, well, just keep it and use it again or return it, whatever the case may be. Um, that's kind of why I landed on Timmy Hill a lot. And he's not using that specific car that they took to Daytona, but the fact that they had a lot of money invested in that race that they really didn't like lose. Sure, they lost an entry fee, but they didn't destroy the car or anything. So they kind of escaped that race without destroying equipment. The fact that they really didn't qualify due to the race because Timmy Hill was on the track doing a qualifying lap and NASCAR led another car out. And Timmy Hill did like, in my opinion, the correct thing of being like, oh yeah, NASCAR will let me redo my lap because they messed up. So he got off the gas instead of like using that car in front of him to qualify a faster lap time. NASCAR didn't allow him to do another lap, so he just went home in a situation where he should have made the race due to him thinking that NASCAR would just let him redo. Anyway, there's a lot of variables, in my opinion, that leans to Timmy Hill performing well today, and that's just why I project him like 26. Like that's well for him, and at his price at $4,700, I don't understand why more people didn't play him.
Well, first of all, I guess my follow up to that, because again, that it's already locked, is that it's like stuff like that, like very like I consider that kind of like fundamental research. You know what I mean? Like how much of what you just said is kind of like known. In other words, like how much of that whole thing that you just said is known by like all the other people in the industry, or is that something? Is that like stuff that gets put out on press releases? Is that stuff that all, or is that just something because you just kind of paid better attention to everybody else?
I think it's more so like just paying attention to these teams and what they're bringing in, either due to like tidbits on like some random, PR release on like their own website or through like Twitter, like rumors and stuff, because none of this stuff is reported by any of like the real NASCAR media. Like nobody focuses on the guy running 30th in Xfinity each and every week. Uh, I feel like other people in the industry like should know that stuff if they're doing like due diligence and looking at things. But I don't think that stuff is cared about or known about as much as I probably think it should be or is.
Okay, so here's a question that came in, and I'm gonna take a shot at this, and then you can take a shot at this. So Double J is saying, what about playing at most 3 from 24th in the back? Now, again, I think implicit in that question is this. Implicit in the question is that it seems as though all these guys from the back are going to be very popular, and that's going to be a popular build. So in an attempt to get different from that, is it a good idea to play at most 3 from 24th in the back? So let me try to like handle my less experienced knowledge, and just then you can handle this. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't handle it that way. So for me, like if you force stuff in like that, I don't know. I think you're like costing yourself too much projection equity, sort of. But what I would do is something like, like we talked about as far as pivots go. I mean, maybe if you're not comfortable with those guys in the back, maybe play other guys. And to say like at most 3 from 24th and back, again, I don't. What I would do at the very least is, if you're going to run a group like that, I would just double check and make sure you're not costing yourself too much in your projected lineup. You know what I mean? Like if you want to do that and think you're going to get somewhat different, then yeah, okay. But what you might end up doing, Double J, if you do that, is then you'll end up getting the most popular guy from the other ranges also. So it's not as if like you're doing yourself that big of a favor by saying at most 3 from 24th and back, because then what you're going to get, like let's look at the starting positions. You're going to be getting for sure like almost 1,000,000% like Kyle Larson. You know what I mean? Like whoever the best guy is that is 23rd or whatever, you're going to end up like incredibly overweight on that guy. Now that's fine. I mean, that's fine. But remember that's really what you're doing there. When you're saying at most 24 back, think about the impact of what that's going to mean if you do that. That's what you'll end up having. You'll end up having like 1,000,000% Kyle Larson, I think, right? And whoever else is like 22nd or I didn't memorize it, 23rd or higher. Like you could talk about that, like.
No, I answer this more, and I take it, race by race basis. But in a situation like this, where mathematically looking at percentages, if you scroll up, just so I can have something to talk about here, like so we have Byron, Reddick, Jones, Briscoe, Dillon, Elliott by these starting positions. I think mathematically and percent wise, like at least 3 of these guys become optimal, if not like 4, depending on what happens up front with lap leaders. And so I think in a race like this, to where and this is a rarity, like on a regular racetrack, that we have this many people in the back, good drivers. And it's only because we're coming off of Daytona, where good drivers get involved in wrecks and they can't qualify due to the rain this weekend. Like, I think I think you're really hurting yourself if you limit each line to only like 3 of these guys. I don't know. I don't know, but I just think I think we are looking at least 3 or 4 guys in the optimal lineup starting here. Like on the screen, I think there's 4 guys here that are optimal. It just depends on which of those ends up working out, which ones end up, not scoring as high as the other ones. But I think 4 of the optimal drivers are on your screen right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, again, you could do that with groups if you want. So what you would do. So what you would do again is it depends. Listen, it depends what optimizer you use. Now, have you ever thought about developing an optimizer for your site, or I mean, like, probably shouldn't. I mean, because but the only reason I mention it is because we actually developed like a primitive one for our site, and it's just so hard to make even a primitive one, to just make it so that it's like even worse than the others. You know what I mean? Like, I just presume everybody else is going to go somewhere else and build optimal lineups or something like that. I mean, you never thought of doing that, right?
Well, Pierce has one that I use. That's why I personally don't pay for Fantasy Crunch or anything, because I get everything that I need from the one that we have.
The one thing I would say again, and this is my, I don't want to say complaint, but this is whether it be regular optimizers, like, I don't say regular in the wrong way, but optimizers like Pierce's. I mean, they basically, they run the optimal. They based on whatever projection you put in, it gives you the top X amount of lineups. Then you could use Fantasy Cruncher, and Fantasy Cruncher, what you could do there is you could institute like some like more randomness. It's a little more beefy. Like you more randomness, and then with SaberSim, it throws in a little bit more ownership fade and upside. It's not as good with NASCAR, if you want to know the truth, but it tries to do that at least. But what nobody really does yet, and I'm still thinking about correlation with respect to NASCAR, because it goes back to like this. I don't know whether it's you or Pierce or both of you. Like, sometimes you'll project like 11 guys in first, like, for example. You know what I mean?
And that's how Pierce used to. That's how he used to do it.
And obviously, 11 guys can't get first, but it is sort of an interesting way to do that, because the idea is that if you're playing a guy that needs to get first to win, you almost want to presume he gets first. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to play him, like, you can't say, well, I'm going to play 3 guys that have a medium projection of 3.22s, finishing position or something like that. One of them is going to win, right? So maybe you should just project them all at first. But I always think about, like, if you're playing these, like, again, these guys in the front, the 1, 2, 3, 4, they're just going to take each other's points, to some degree. Where in the back, you're not taking, I guess, as many of the points, right? I mean, like, there's plenty of room for the 36th guy to come in 9th and the 35th guy to come in 12th, and everybody's happy,
Well, let's talk about this in very much a correlated team stack type of situation here for this race specifically, because I think it lends itself to doing that, and that might be why I've ended up on more Chase Elliott, because if a majority of the industry believes that Larson is going to be fast, regardless of if he wins or not, but if they believe that Larson's going to be fast, we have a situation to where his teammates, Chase Elliott and William Byron, start in the back, and they don't devour each other. They can both perform well, and they are not affecting each other. But as a whole, that team should be fast. And so I think that is why I've probably end up on Chase Elliott, just due to the fact that repeating what I said earlier real fast, like the spinning up for him, I think it changes your lineup slightly, but the fact that him and Byron are both expensive, the fact that they should both show up and be fast, correlated as with like Larson being fast due to and showing that they've been fast in previous tracks last year in this car, I would want to play them together. Same thing with Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon. I firmly believe that RCR is taking a step forward this year, and I would like, if I think Kyle Busch is going to perform well today, I can't find any reason to think that Austin Dillon doesn't also perform well today. And they don't devour each other's like potential points. All they have to do is just show up and be fast and finish up front. Whereas, if you're chasing most of the time, the team drivers are hurting each other because only one can lead a lap or one can get a fast lap here. But this situation where I like that isn't in play, or that aspect isn't in play.
And the three guys from the other group you mentioned were Byron, Elliott, and Larson.
From I mentioned Byron Elliott and Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch.
No, but Kyle Busch and Dillon were one group, right?
Uh-huh.
And you're saying Byron and Elliott were the other two?
Yeah, and Larson, but I don't think you can make that lineup work.
No, not that you can make it work, but I'm just saying, like, so, and again, we had this discussion last week, and I don't know if it worked. I think it actually worked out. I think one of them worked out. Like, I remember it was the Priest and somebody else. There was like three guys that we did. Maybe I'll do that again. Maybe I'll do Busch and Dillon. But you know what we got to do? Let's just see about that. Let's just see if we can't make that lineup work. Let's build a lineup with who you said, and let's just see how impossible it is. It probably is, just for the hell of it. We'll go put Byron.
Now, see, I don't like this because now you're just showing everybody how I'm doing my lines today. That's not fair. But
I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is you're saying there's something that couldn't work, is what I'm saying.
So this is with the Larson line, which is we're at 6,600. Or sorry,
no problem. Sorry, no, my point is that so here's what you could do if you wanted to. Okay, like if you came up with an idea like that, like Byron, Elliott, Larson, right? You could lock in those three. So so let's do this. We can do something more theoretical. How about that? So let's go into we're back into home. We'll go into lineup rules. We'll go into add new rules. We'll go into group, and to put a group, we'll put in Byron. I just want to see what kind of guys we get if we did that. So Byron, which is where we'll start by the starting position. That's probably a good way to find him. Byron.
So as we do this, because I messed with this earlier, the reason I probably spoke not out of turn, but in a sense of like, oh, you can't do that, is because when I was trying to, I felt like I was giving too much up by maybe not getting to either Reddick or possibly a combination of both Jones and Briscoe, because then you'd have to end up punting with either Ty Dillon or somebody lower than that. I felt like I was giving up a little too much in terms of ceiling projections with these, but I am very curious on what this.
But the way this is the way I like to do it. So like here, if we lock in those three, like for example, and just build the rest out of projections, what we get are. First of all, you do get a bunch of combinations. So you get these lineups, right? So what I like to do then is see like how they project relative to like your other types of things, right? So all these guys project like 270. Now, by the way, this is ranking them by Sabre score, so we don't want to do that for the purposes of this analysis. We'll actually rate them by actual projected score. So these guys all project about 276, 276, 276, 272. So let's say these two would be like the top projected of these. So you have like 276. And when we go back to this one, which was the main 150 build.
Yeah.
So you're giving them about 20 off the optimal. And then maybe actually let's resort these by projected scores. Yeah, you're giving about 20 to 15 points off the optimal. But so what are you getting for that, right? So if you're giving up 15 points off the optimal, you got to be getting something for your money. So it's either has to be
it's either a lower ownership total,
right,
or just salary differences.
Well, what I would say is that either ownership difference or kind of like sneaky correlation. You know what I mean? Like because we're talking about a build that the projections are not calculating the impact of, right? These guys are all being projected as kind of median, like non-correlative lineups. That's what everything happens, right? And and this is the way basketball and baseball, and specifically baseball and hockey work. Like if we're gonna presume that if one guy does well, the other one's gonna do well. Like if one car is good, then they're all good, for example. Then you could add like 10 fantasy points maybe to the projection on something like this. But again, whether you want to play this or not, this is the analysis. This is what you do. And the only thing I would say, when you get like stuff like this, what I do like about this is, like you said, you get that funky like Alec Almirola play. You get like some funkiness, like Truex, like you mentioned earlier. Like, I don't think he's going to be 27. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So that's one thing you could do. Let's
I want to add this, just real quick. I mean, this, but just talking to other people, like, this is how you play a chalk type of slate and still feel comfortable that you're not going to be incredibly duplicated if that ends up being like a high scoring line, like that Eric Almirola line,
right.
that Truex line. Like, we're kind of
Right.
going out of our way to get to different builds that land on that.
Yep.
Like, I don't hate these types of slates, really.
Yeah, I mean, listen. To me, I like all these. Right? So this is everything here is a. Now here's a guy. Like, here's an example. Now I don't know if he's going to be only 10% owned, because, like I said, like all the place differential guys get a little bit juiced. But Ty Dillon, who is that the guy that we busted with last week, or was it Reddick?
Yeah, he blew a motor. That was unfortunate.
Oh, okay.
That was so unfortunate.
So you know what? Recency bias is a thing in all freaking DFS. You know what I mean? Like, so who wants to play him busting last? Blowing a motor last week. I don't know.
Normally I would say that, but the fact that depending on what projections you use and what sites you use, Ty Dillon's being projected near 25 to 30% on some sites, just due to the fact that the value range is very wonky this week. That you have a lot of people in the value range starting, like mid-20s, in the teens, and really it just defaults to Ty Dillon not being able to lose you any points there. So I think Ty Dillon is going to be relatively highly owned today.
I don't like to comment on this too much, but I do want to comment on what Ziz says, only because I haven't seen him before. And most of the people that are in my Discord and in my thing, like I've spoken to before, and they know my thoughts on all this kind of stuff, and we like to keep everything positive. But someone makes a comment, I am going to address it. So everybody is very different, Ziz, first of all. Now, first of all, to illustrate to your point, when you said I would never listen to advice, I promise you this, that, and maybe you don't even know me, Ziz, what can I tell you? That the only people I bring here are people that I listen to like 24/7. Okay, so if you don't want to listen to the people that I listen to, that's totally chill, totally fine. I promise you this. I can't promise you anybody's going to win. All I promise you that you're seeing what I do, and you're seeing who I listen to, and I don't bring any freaking hacks on here. I don't bring anybody or whatever. Okay. So that's the first, and for those of you who know my history, like I taught poker back when I did that, and yeah, I made money doing it, but I did it because I just really enjoy helping people get better. I used to teach the bar exam for a living back in the day. I just really enjoy it. And that's why I do the DFS stuff. Do you know how much money I make from my DFS site? I mean, like, it's almost nothing. I really enjoy doing this. And the other thing, the reason I do it, like kind of selfishly, is that I get better at it by teaching people how to do it, because it requires me to do this. Now, as far as like, as I don't want to show anybody's actual lineup. See, here's the cool thing about it is, for me, like, I don't want to violate any terms of service by like throwing lineups out there, whatever it is. But what's cool about it is I could show like my whole process. And I honestly, first of all, no one would want to play my lineups anyway, because they would duplicate it and we would all lose, right? Pretty much. Especially in NASCAR. But I just really want to show people a process to show you how you could work in the future. So if we happen to be building like a lineup or something like that, it's just kind of for illustrative purposes. Z says, all I can tell you is that Brandon's the man. Okay. He has good information. And again, we haven't really done this a lot when we go through actual lineups and stuff like that. So he didn't know where I was going with that or whatever it is. I'm never going to say, like, Brandon, show me all your lineups and have everybody just freaking look at them. You know what I mean? So we're really trying to do process so that, you know what? Like, and I talk about this in my other videos, is that I could go through like my hockey builds and say, okay, here's who you're supposed to play. But I would like it so that everybody here does not have to come back every day for the picks video to see who to play. You know what my idea is that, listen, you have to subscribe to some place to get projections. You have to subscribe to some place to get content, whatever it is. But you should be able to learn how to build lineups to yourself. And here's like kind of a cool example. I'm sorry to get completely
No,
sidetracked.
you're good. Go on.
When Bobby and
very
I
quickly.
first
Or go
when
ahead.
Bobby and I first got started in DFS, right? So not when Bobby and I, when I first got started learning from Bobby, because Bobby coached me. He did DFS years before I ever learned it, right? And he coached me how to play. And at the very beginning, we were going through NBA, and he was showing me who he was building and stuff and who he was using. We were talking about the plays, and for a while, I was like, you okay with like telling me like who you're playing and stuff like that? And he's, no, that's fine, whatever. And after like a couple of weeks doing it, it kind of dawned on me, like it almost didn't even matter. Like I would play with the same guys he would play somehow, and he would win and I would lose. I didn't understand it, because so much of this is lineup construction and how to employ leverage, that even if I just gave you like the top plays, like you wouldn't even, I mean, I wouldn't say you wouldn't know what to do with them, but so and this would be my last point on this. If you come into my office where I run my hedge fund, like on my board to the right is literally a list of the symbols of like the 30 stocks that are like in my portfolio, right? And somebody came in once and said, "Do you mind? Why do you care if it's like up there?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't care, because I could tell people exactly what's up. It won't even matter, because they don't know how to trade them. They don't know how one correlates with the other, or whatever it is." In any case,
and they don't know when you bought in.
In any case, we're only here to teach, and we're going back to the original point of this, was that if you had an idea like either Double J had about limiting, or you had a kind of good correlative idea like Brandon had about like team stacking, which we talk about a lot, you could use the optimizer at your disposal to build that. Now, if you wanted to, like you said, if you wanted to hand build lineups, like this is what I would do. Okay, and again, let's say now again, I don't know why I don't have it listed by place differential here, but if I were going to build like a hand built lineup, and this is what I do with hockey, I literally just stare at the board. Right, this is my board, and I say, first thing is, anybody rated near here that's not that high here. You know what I mean? Like that's like,
yeah.
Now it's not that easy to find. And like, so what I would do, like literally start building lineups with the lowest owned guy
Kyle
that's like
Busch.
up here.
That's exactly how I ended up on him today.
Who are you looking at, Bush or Hamlin? I'm like,
Kyle Busch.
Yeah. So and again, listen, it's garbage in, garbage out. Like if their projections suck or your ownership projections suck, whatever. But and listen, this is not going to be 100% right. It never is. But that's how you can start, even with a hand built lineup. Just something like that. And that's literally how I kind of handle it. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody up here. You'll get like a I don't know who it could be, but every once in a while you'll get a guy up here, and you can just start your hand built lineups that way. Or like you said, I mean, listen, I'm not, I would say good enough, but I mean, if I'm going to build like the amount of lineups I'm going to build, like 40 lineups, I don't know how Bobby does it. Bobby like hand builds like 30, 40 lineups, and you could do that with 20, I guess. For me, it's very, very difficult. I'm just, everybody's got their skills, and I'm much better with a spreadsheet than I am with actually doing it by hand or whatever. But I happen to use SaberSim to help me. But like you said, you could build your groups, and one of the things you mentioned was maybe Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon. Another one is maybe Byron, Elliott, and Larson.
I'll tell you right now, like Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, outside of having having high ownership on Briscoe and Byron, like Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch will probably make or break my personal day, just by stances I want to take on those two drivers. I want to play Kyle Busch today.
Now, did he end up? Oh, he ended up getting there anyway, but he took a penalty at the end, right? Okay, okay. So he's mad, right?
He got crashed on the last lap. So he went from third to finishing, last car in lead lap or something along those lines. That's why he's starting 21st or 20th, wherever he is.
So here's my, and again, I keep coming back to this. So here's my question about the idea that if Byron's car is good, then Elliott's car is good, then Larson's car is good. Is that the way it works with teams? Because I again, not knowing anything about NASCAR or whatever, I would wonder if, like, if a unit or if a team has an X amount of money to spend, that maybe, again, I would think maybe it's like they'd have to sacrifice like one for the benefit of the other. That there's no way they can make it so that every car is fast, but maybe, or is it more conceptual? In other words, once they figure out how to set a car up, then they can set all three of the cars up that way. Is that more the deal?
It's more so a combination of the two, because NASCAR does not have like a salary cap or like a spending limit. And so in terms of like the top teams where like Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, they can technically spend as much as they want, and they typically don't leave out a certain driver. Whereas like Stuart Haas and stuff will like typically at some point in the season sacrifice one car for the greater benefit of like the remaining three, and so on and so forth and stuff. So in this example for like RCR and Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, they've got a huge influx of money coming in this year because Kyle Busch is on board, to whereas it used to be, Reddick and Dillon, and they would kind of like leave Dillon off just because he wasn't the one necessarily competing for all the wins. But now, since there's an influx of money coming in, I believe that'll elevate both drivers. That's why I want to be bullish on them to start the year off. Hendrick basically have just infinite pockets of money, so they don't necessarily like leave out one of their drivers. Whereas like, Front Row Motorsports, McDowell and Todd Gilliland, they don't necessarily have a lot of money to begin with. And so while they're not necessarily leaving one car over the other, they just aren't competing financially with the other powerhouses.
All right, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna get going. I want to leave you guys with one. I want to illustrate this not this last point. I want to emphasize a point, which I can't believe it's coming from the comment Ziz mentioned, but I want to. It's more of, I guess, a life lesson than anything else. And I'm going to pivot off of what Sterling said here about, he says, "Love the teaching it makes me better" statement. So before I ever did DFS and before I ever did even poker, not that many people know this, but before I even got into finance, what I did for a living, I used to teach the bar exam for a living. I traveled all over the country lecturing like 500 students at a time on taking the bar exam, specifically the multiple choice part of it, which is called the MBE, the multi-state bar exam. And people would ask me, like, "Oh, what score did you get when you took the test?" And I took the test. I did very, very well. But after I started teaching it, I still had to actually take the test for my company so that we could like memorize the questions and stuff for future. Once I started teaching it, I like almost never had anything wrong ever again. Okay. Because what happens is when you have to distill everything, into most simplified form, it makes you think about things differently. And then and it really makes you understand it like backwards and forwards. And then you fast forward to when I did Poker X Factor, when I did my poker training site, I had this big argument with Cliff, who was my partner in this before we even launched it. He was saying, why should we start teaching people how to play? It's going to just ruin all of our EV. And I said, okay, I thought about it with him. I said, you're missing one point here, is that you're probably going to get better. And that's what I ended up doing by making my spreadsheets for poker. I'm making and trying to figure out how to teach a 10-year-old how to play and maybe better. And it's the same thing with DFS. It's the same thing with anything. So my comment is, if you can find a 5-year-old, so to speak, right, and you can explain it to them so they can understand it, then you are improving your own understanding of it. So that would be and that's why I do this. Not that you guys are all 5-year-olds. And I love doing the advanced stuff like from time to time also, but like sometimes people get a little bit too advanced, and they forget about what this is all about. Pick low owned plays, you know what I mean? Like lower owned plays but not, not too low owned that you have no chance to win. You know what I mean? That's and where the cutoff is. Listen, if I knew whoever knows the answer to that basically broke DFS. You know what I mean? And no one's going to be able to play anymore. But until then, all I can do is, again, keep teaching you guys, keep having like guys in with Brandon in there. And for me, selfishly, I try to make these a little different than probably the hours of other crap, not crap, 100 of other the other hours of stuff of content Brandon does to maybe kind of diversify his brain a little bit to make him.
No, yeah, and I mean, that's why I'm here, because this isn't like the stuff that I normally do. I love talking about this stuff at this level of conversation, because we're past like, oh, what is a value driver? What is a dominator? Like we're really deep in the weeds at this point. Adding on, that's kind of why this year I've like I do more post race analysis of like my own lineups, and I'm recording myself building my lineups to show to people post like the slate locking, like how I find or how I get to certain drivers, how I get to certain builds. And it's just like me unfiltered building lineups, whether I'm talking a lot, whether I'm not talking a lot. It's just my actual process, because I want to show that stuff to people. I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this like years after, this or next year, whatever the case may be. So if I can help anybody learn from my mistakes or learn from what I'm doing right, or whatever the case may be, like I want that out there,
Is there a race next week?
Of course. Yeah.
Let's say, of course, who knows? I don't know anything. So what's next week?
I think it's Phoenix or Las Vegas. Don't ask me follow-up questions. I take this day by day.
Very good, very good. There's a race somewhere. Someone's racing
somewhere. We'll cover it when it gets there.
Whether it's a race to get to the water fountain or a race on NASCAR.
Yeah.
Right? So what I think I'm going to do next week, maybe I'll do like a Discord tournament where the winner gets something. Maybe I'll do that. In any case, same thing. God forbid I win something. Brandon gets a free roll, and someone here will get something too. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but in any case, thank you very much. Even though whatever. So for those of you who don't know him, Brandon Cruz, he has a YouTube account. He's got a Patreon, which I myself and a paid subscriber to. And I encourage everybody to do that. And just listen. He's one of the top. I don't know how to rank these guys. He's one of 5 guys that I even know that really does this in a way that I respect. If you want to know the truth. And I strongly suggest that you guys follow him. However you do. For me, what I do with Brandon stuff is I try to watch his early video on YouTube during the week. And then when his projections come out on Patreon, I kind of incorporate those. But honestly, like Patreon, until he puts like behind the paywall stuff, what his Patreon is really there for is just basically for tips. You know what I mean? He's doing a lot of the YouTube stuff for free. And if you get anything out of it, just give him a Patreon subscription or whatever it is. But in any case, so next week, Kyle Busch is racing all 3 series. So it's 13,000 Kyle Busch in the truck series.
Yeah, in the trucks again. Yeah, that'll be fun.
And they'll probably put him 36th, right? Is that okay? Great. All right.
Thank you very much for having me on again. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I enjoyed talking to you and doing this stuff.
All right. Good luck, everybody.